It should come as no surprise that if you want to draw really amazing characters, you have to know the anatomy of the figure. This is especially true when it comes to the portrait or the head, because it's what we look to in a character so we can relate to them. You can forgive a lot of anatomy mistakes on the figure, but not on the face, so you need to make sure that you draw it well. What most teachers would do at this point is teach you the proportions of the skull and how to draw them. But that's not what I'm going to do for you. Learning the exact ideal measurements is only going to take you so far. What you want is to make that knowledge flexible so you can mold the skull into any structure that you want, so you can create the characters that you're visualizing in your head. You don't just want to draw the same character over and over again, have the same face structure. You want to draw tons of unique and awesome characters. So let's try to accomplish that together. If you need a free reference for the skull that you can move around at will, go to sketchfab.com and search skull. As you draw the skull, you'll get a feel for the basic proportions and placements of things. It's highly doubtful that you'll end up making major screw-ups like putting the eye sockets where the mouth and jaw should be. We're not really going to worry about that here. What I want to do is help you learn the major masses of the skull so you can draw them in any position that you need to. And then we're going to show how those masses relate to when you draw a face, when there's muscles and skin on top. And it will show you why learning the skull is so important. Before you are three of the most basic head poses that you'll see. It's front, profile or side view, and 3/4. And what I want you to do is think about them as if three of these pieces are stacked on top of each other like slices. And I'm going to draw it out for you. The first slice is the forehead, the brow. The second slice is the cheekbone and the top of that mouth area. And the third is the jaw. And when you think of these pieces like this, it's a lot easier to break down the skull. You don't have to worry about proportion. The proportions just play within the areas that you've designated for these pieces. The last piece I'm drawing here is the skull as if it was a finished face. Just we're going to keep it very basic. But you can see how these forms relate. Again, we just have the brow, the nose is part of the cheekbones, and the jaw. And now I'm going to start to go into more complex skull poses while still thinking of that same relationship. The forehead, the cheekbone, the jaw. And now you're going to have to start turning those in perspective. Obviously, you're not going to see the underside of the skull when you start drawing a real head, because the neck would be there, but you will see all these other pieces start to play together, like when you see the eye or the cheekbone from below or above in this second drawing's case. And the reason that I don't want to just regurgitate the same skull proportions is because I don't think that they're necessary. You can find them anywhere. And there's a really amazing quote from George Bridgman about this. He'll say it better than me, so I'm just going to read it. He says, "There are many conceptions of measuring, scientific and ideal, and they all differ. If given proportions were used, even though these proportions were the ideal average, they would result in a drawing without character." Now, what he's saying here, essentially, is that if you use the same proportions every single time and you mastered them perfectly, you would have the same face every time. It would be a drawing without character. There would be no life to it. You would inject none of your ideas or your thoughts into it. It's the same way how I kind of feel about using too many shortcuts for straight lines in perspective. Like you lose that character to your line work if you let sort of the computer make all your straight lines for you. And you'll do the same thing for characters. If you just memorize and regurgitate the same proportions for skulls and for heads, you'll have the same head every single time. So you want to learn these masses so that you can manipulate them and sculpt them, mold them into different shapes. And to do that, you need to, like I said, learn the masses and then draw them in lots of different positions so you understand what it looks like when you turn those forms. And you can see here I'm really trying to flex my knowledge and twisting the head in many different directions. And something that came to me recently was drawing animal skulls. If you really want to test your knowledge, there's a lot that's similar with animal skulls, so you can draw those too and flex your knowledge even further. And finally here, what I wanted to show, the last thing that I wanted to show, was what it looks like when you start to design a skull of your own using all the same shapes and that understanding of the three different sections, the forehead, the cheekbones, the jaw. You can see here I've given really kind of robust jaw right there. I'm giving him kind of a rounded forehead. This is going to be a male character, and really chunky cheekbones. But even though it is a little bit chunkiness, it's still kind of a thin head. So I'm imagining like a muscular character. And then I copied the skull over so that I could draw on top of it. Obviously there may be some fixing that you need to do, but you can see how this starts to develop and turn into its own character, and you would never get here if you just drew the same skull over and over again, right? I'm able to design a character because I know these forms, I know what it looks like when they overlap, and I've tried to study it in various positions. This is a very simple, like almost three-quarter pose, so it's not very challenging, but it's challenging to me because I had to design a character and usually start with more basic poses, and it was successful. This is just the basics of how to learn the skull and sculpt it into whatever character design you're imagining. Obviously, when you start moving into rendering with light and color, you're going to need to know the planes of the skull, and that also can become a little bit more complicated. But if you take it one step at a time, you will easily learn the skull, and that knowledge will bring flexibility and freedom to your ability to draw whatever you want. As a final note, thank you to Wacom for sponsoring this video. I hope you all have a happy and healthy creative process.